What up, y'all? Welcome to part 3 of my MCU ranking videos. We're almost there. We're halfway. Hey, we're halfway there. Hey, kill me. So we're gonna start. Let's get to it. Number 9, Captain America: Civil War. Civil War is a good movie. It carries all of the MCU into Phase 3 and beyond. It is very important. And if you think it's not good, look at the poster. Don't you want those two to kiss? I want them to kiss. I want to see their child.
Give me the child.
This is a Captain America movie at its core. I will say right up front, 2 of the strongest performances in this movie are given by Chris Evans as Captain America and Sebastian Stan as Bucky Barnes, or the Winter Soldier, whichever you prefer to refer to him as. And they are definitely really good on screen. I think the parts where they're like, look, they have chemistry, I think those parts actually don't really work. There's a part where they're going to the Arctic or whatever, and they have a little conversation about the 40s, and it doesn't work for me at all. And then you have the weird little conversation they have before the police raid Winter Soldier's apartment, and there I'm like, I totally buy you 2 as friends. Now that I've said Captain America and Bucky Barnes are good, allow me to say that Iron Man is better. Robert Downey Jr. steals the show, man. I might be a little biased because yes, he's my favorite actor. Yes, Iron Man's also my favorite superhero. I still think he's kinda the best part of this movie. I think this movie's scale is genuinely impressive. I have a friend who tells me to this day, even after Infinity War, he's like, I can't believe this movie happened. I totally understand where he's coming from. The climactic fight of this movie that's actually not the climax, I mean the airport fight, not the fight in the Winter Soldier station or whatever, it's a spectacle. It's something to be seen. Every character has their own thing to do, and it's fun. It's genuinely very fun. Ant-Man is in this movie, and he doesn't suck in this movie. Paul Rudd is a great actor when you give him Peyton Reed handling him, I guess. Black Widow is phenomenal in this film. She's the strongest female character in the MCU. I don't care what anybody says. She is genuinely smart and funny and well written. Scarlett Johansson, phenomenal actress. Jeremy Renner as Hawkeye. He has no reason to be there. He's still great. Paul Bettany as Vision. Give me that. Give me that Paul Bettany red face, bro. Keep being in Marvel movies. I'll love you and I'll make out with you eventually. Elizabeth Olsen as Scarlet Witch. I've made my feelings about her creepily clear. She's really good in this movie too. The Don Cheadle as War Machine. He's in the movie. Anthony Mackie as Falcon. He's also in this movie. They're flying around and stuff. Do you care? Not really. Black Panther gets introduced in this movie, and like I said during Black Panther, I think Chadwick Boseman kind of kills it in this movie. I mean, you got to talk about the elephant in the room, and that's that they introduced Spider-Man in this movie. They got the rights to Spider-Man, and they were like, shove Spider-Man in there. He is great in this movie. He's very fun. This movie is very, very fun. But on top of that, it's the first Marvel movie that made me cry. This movie is just a testament to the skill of the Russo brothers. Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans have so much chemistry on screen that even when they're like at each other's throats, you're like, man, I want you to kiss. Kissy, kissy. Discounting this movie as only fun is dangerous because it has some of my favorite serious scenes in it. Iron Man's entire ending motivations are so understandable and scary, also deeply sad, that I think it's hard not to love this movie. I do want to say that for as much praise as this movie does get, there's somebody who gets no praise, and it makes me very sad. Danny Brühl as Zemo. There ain't nobody named Nemo in my Marvel. Danny Brühl as Zemo is really good, and he gets overshadowed by the huge implications of this movie. I don't think that changes the fact that he's great. He is my 3rd favorite villain in the MCU. And it's because, again, he's understandable. His family died, and he's like, the only way I can take my revenge because I can't kill these people. They're invincible as far as I'm concerned. But I can tear them apart from within, and that's what I'm gonna do. And that's how I'll get my revenge. And then I'm gonna kill myself, and then Black Panther will be like, no, you can't. The living aren't done with you yet. And a line that just sends shivers up my spine. Next time you watch Civil War, just pay attention. to Zemo. He really, really kills it, and I just think nobody really talks about it. And yet somehow, this isn't the strongest Captain America outing. All right, here you go. Here's the controversy. Let's just get this over with. Number 8 is Iron Man 3. I know. I know. Hey, man. Why y'all hate Iron Man 3 so much? It's not a bad film at all. I went to Iron Man 3 to see Iron Man. All I saw was Tony Stark. It's like, did you watch the first movie there, bud? He is Iron Man. He doesn't need the suit. He is Iron Man without the suit. That's like the main theme of all 3 of these movies, and yet that's the main complaint I hear about this film. Well, that and the Mandarin thing. Ben Kingsley, what an actor to get. Did you see it coming? I guarantee you didn't. He didn't shoot yoga fire like Dalsum from Street Fighter 2, so I didn't like it. Did you ever think that maybe Shane Black expected you to go into this movie going like, yoga fire? He was just like, I'm taking this in a less stupid way. The Mandarin is a bad villain. I don't care what anybody says. I think that Gwyneth Paltrow's a little weak in this movie, sure. I also think she should have died in this movie and it would have set up Civil War and Age of Ultron perfectly. I think that's my main problem with this movie. If Pepper Potts had died, Tony Stark's motivations for the movies to come would have made a lot more sense to me. Robert Downey Jr. in arguably my favorite performance he's ever given. He is so good in this movie. This is the only movie I've ever seen that genuinely illustrates how a panic attack feels. Nobody acknowledges that. Why aren't you addressing how this movie addresses mental illness? It's great. Ty Simpkins is in this movie, Jurassic World kid. Rah, rah. And he's pretty good. I mean, he is by no means a show stealer. The fact that he can act next to Robert Downey Jr. and I'm not like, get him out of this movie, kind of impressed me, I'll grant. I wish Happy was in this movie more. It feels like a weird middle finger to give to Jon Favreau for not wanting to direct this movie. Guy Pearce is genuinely great in this movie. I don't know if I even buy him as a villain still, and I think this movie is great. So I understand why you wouldn't like Guy Pearce as a villain, and I understand why you wouldn't want to acknowledge him as the Mandarin. Seriously, just give Iron Man 3 a chance. Go back, rewatch it, realize that it's better than that. It deserves more than to be written off because it didn't have enough of a suit in it. I just think that if you give this movie another chance, you will find yourself surprisingly rewarded with what you find. Number 7, Captain America, Winter Soldier. I know this is going to be lower on the list than I think a lot of you guys would put it. That is not to say this movie is not beyond phenomenal. This movie has easily the most visceral action of any Marvel movie, and it's because it's just a spy film. And they really lean into that fact with this movie. The Winter Soldier is the single coolest villain the MCU's ever had. Especially when he has the mask and the goggles on, he just looks so dope. I really, really love Sebastian Stan as the Winter Soldier in this movie. I think it is his best outing as the character, and I actually think the same goes for Black Widow. Scarlett Johansson in this movie proves that she is the strongest female character in the MCU with this film. She is phenomenal. Scarlett Johansson made Black Widow her own. Chris Evans is Captain America in this movie. He's great. I really, really genuinely think this is just a super impressive outing for a person we already knew could play this character really well. And then he comes in this and he knocks it out of the park anyway and goes above our expectations. Samuel L. Jackson is Nick Fury. I love how entwined he is in the plot of this movie, and they don't do it as much in the rest of the MCU, and that makes me kind of sad. At least we have this, right? Robert Redford as Pierce. What an unfortunate thing Robert Redford didn't have the state of mind to not let us know he was the villain, because that kind of sucks, because that reveal is so good if you don't know. But I went into this movie going like, Robert Redford's the secret villain of this movie. That's fine. I already know that. He still knocks it out of the park. He's still great. Anthony Mackie is introduced as Falcon in this movie. This is the only movie where my only comment isn't he's in this movie, because they actually do something with him. They give him stuff to do and they make him so good. I'm happy that everybody in this movie kills it as hard as they do. George St. Pierre makes a cameo at the beginning of this movie. If you watched UFC growing up like I did, kind of took me out of the movie for like half a second. I was like, huh? Then they started fighting and I was like, oh, never mind. I don't care at all. This movie is the debut of the Russos in the MCU. I haven't talked about them extensively. I want to talk about them right now. The Russos came from directing two of my favorite comedies. They directed a lot of Arrested Development, and then they went and helped Dan Harmon make Community what it was. You know the Community guys are involved because every movie they make, you're like, oh, there's Danny Pudi, and in Civil War, you're like, oh, there's Jim Rash playing just the Dean. I really love that the Russos ended up going from the most acclaimed of TV comedy to the most acclaimed of superhero films. I think they make the transition super gracefully. I want to thank you guys for carrying what we know as the MCU all the way to its end. You guys were the perfect people to do it, and I'm so happy it was you guys. Number 6, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I love this movie. This movie is the second MCU film that made me cry. I think this movie is also a testament to how good of a director James Gunn is. The fact that this movie is, in my opinion, funnier than the first film, and yet actually gets a bigger heart and gives you more meaty themes of family, which is what a lot of the MCU deals with, where it's like, what bonds will you break to do what's right? A lot of this movie is just a moral conflict with Star-Lord. It was so smart giving Rocket Raccoon the side thing where it's like he feels like the outcast of the Guardians, his new family, and he just doesn't play along sometimes, and it causes problems. And then by the end of the film, Yondu makes him realize that, like, no matter how you act, you have to know that you're appreciated if you are appreciated, and he is. I love that. The themes of who is your real family. He may have been your father, boy, but he was never your daddy. That's such a good line, and Yondu is so good in this movie. All the actors from the first movie that return in this film are great. I know I ended the first Guardians by just saying the name, Sean Gunn. I'll say a little bit more about Sean Gunn here. He is a genuinely interesting character who I think gets even more done for him here, and I'm super excited to see Guardians 3, where we get to see even more of him, where he's new Yondu. He's not going to replace Michael Rooker in my heart. He's going to be fun to watch, and he's going to be interesting to see where his loyalties lie now that Yondu is gone. Kurt Russell as Ego the Living Planet. Holy crap, they went and did it. They went and grabbed like an F-tier villain from the comics, and then they made him a super compelling villain. He's not understandable at all, because it's like, hey, I'm a god. And I'm like, I'm not a god. I can't relate to that. 0 out of 10. I also think that the fact that Kurt Russell is good in this movie is great. I loved Kurt Russell in his old stuff. Like, I go back and watch The Thing all the time. The 1982 version of The Thing is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. And Kurt Russell and Keith David carry that movie on their back. But Kurt Russell has almost like fallen out of caring. Go watch the Fast and the Furious movies that he's in and tell me that's an actor who cares at all about the fact that he's in a movie.
About Sky High, bro. Fucking the best movie of all time.
That made me really sad inside.
I don't like that.
I think Zoe Saldana and Chris Pratt, their burgeoning relationship, it's so good, where it's like Zoe Saldana really never trusted anybody. She's learning to trust Peter Quill, but it's taking a while. I also think that Nebula in this movie is great, where Nebula and Gamora finally make up and they finally just talk about what's wrong. I know how I'm talking about this movie makes you think that it's like an A&E drama. It's not. It's a really funny comedy. The fact that they snuck so many good themes and character moments into this movie blows me away. I think this movie has so much more staying power than the first one that it's hard for me to hear people say they like the first one more. You liked the jokes more because you didn't expect them. Rewatch Guardians 2. You'll be surprised by how much the jokes still make you laugh, because unlike Guardians 1, for me at least, Guardians 2 has continued to make me laugh on every rewatch. I think everybody needs to watch this movie at least like twice. It's worth the time at the very least. Just go rewatch it. Give it a chance. I think if you do, you might even like it more than Guardians 1, like I do. Sylvester Stallone's in this movie and he talks weird. I had to get back to jokes because I was too serious for a while, and that makes me uncomfortable.
I used to watch it all the fucking time. Like, I used to watch that, like, every day.
See, you got to give me a break between the depressing statements.
It's the only DVD I own.
I lived in squalor. I had a CTV, a DVD player, and a copy of Sky High. Number 5, Doctor Strange. Oh, man. How did this movie lose Best Special Effects? I get that it was to The Jungle Book, and The Jungle Book deserves some kind of recognition for what it did for special effects, but this movie is perfect when it comes to special effects, and it's so intricate and fun to watch. It makes this movie a more enjoyable experience than it should be. I think casting Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange is the smartest thing the MCU's done since casting Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. And it's the smartest thing they had done until they cast Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I love this movie. I went and saw this movie on the night of the election in 2016. Me and Daniel went and saw this movie right before the results of the election came out. And as the movie was starting, we were both just on our phones, like refreshing the Google page. We were like, this can't happen, right? This can't happen. No, no, please don't, please don't. And then I was like, we have to turn off our phones because we're just not going to enjoy this movie if we're just sitting there going like, come on, come on, come on. Don't do this to me. Yeah, am I going to spontaneously combust? This movie is so good that it just took our minds off of it entirely. We didn't turn on our phones again until we got in the car to drive home.
Forgot that the election was happening until the depression set in right afterwards.
That's so impressive, and I honestly think I might be a little biased towards this movie, placing it this high because of that. The fact that it just genuinely took me to another world for a little while. Benedict Cumberbatch, I wish he was more likable. He doesn't play a very likable character, and I don't know how much that's going to resonate with you guys, but I don't think he's likable for 90% of this movie. I think he's likable in the Dormammu scene, and that's it. I think this movie could have been handled a little bit differently, but I just don't think it would have been as magical. The fact that Stephen Strange is such a dick makes his journey into this other world so much more enjoyable, because he's not a fish out of water, he's a penis. Tilda Swinton is the Ancient One. She kills it. I didn't know I was into alien-faced bald women until this movie, and that was a revelation I couldn't take back out of my subconscious. She is worth every second of screen time, and however much they paid her, I just don't think it was enough. I don't know how much she was paid, to be fair, but it should have been the entire budget of the movie. I didn't cry during this movie, but I got really close when the Ancient One died. It's a really sad scene. It's only because Tilda Swinton is so good in this movie that this movie works as well as it does. Benedict Wong as Wong.
Call him something else.
They should have renamed the character when they cast him. I know that's a weird hassle for something that most people aren't going to care about, but it bugs me, and movies are made for me. Change it for me. I think he's pretty good. He has the cringiest jokes in the MCU. Every joke he tries doesn't really land at all, and that makes me kind of sad. Chiwetel Ejiofor as Mordo. He kind of makes up for the lack of substance that is the character of Wong. I'm very excited to see him as the villain of Doctor Strange 2. I think he's gonna kill it. I love him as an actor. We were literally just talking about like our favorite actors with really hard to pronounce names. He was one of the ones we brought up, and it's between him and the guy who plays Killer Croc, ironically. He's not good in that movie, but like nobody's good in that movie. But yeah, Mordo definitely makes up for a lot of shortcomings from Wong. But then Benedict Cumberbatch doesn't have really any shortcomings in his performance, so instead of making up for something that should be a negative, it just kind of boosts this movie beyond even what I thought it was going to be. I genuinely think he helps this movie be as good as it is. Mads Mikkelsen is the villain. That's a nothing villain. He got purpley eyes. Kojima saw that and was like, yeah, I'm gonna straight up copy and paste that into my video game. Rachel McAdams is the love interest in this movie. It's super weird to say this. As little as she does in this movie, I think she's a relatively strong character. She definitely holds her own against Benedict Cumberbatch, which is a thing not a lot of actors can do. And Rachel McAdams is one of those actors who refuses so many projects. When I see her in a movie, it's genuinely just like, oh, I forgot you existed and you're great. The last person I want to talk about. Who is it, Daniel? Who is it? Who's the last one? You should know this.
Is it Michael Stuhlbarg?
It's Michael Stuhlbarg. Michael Stuhlbarg, very similar to Sam Rockwell. He's a character actor whom I absolutely adore. I wish his character was more significant. Michael Stuhlbarg is a phenomenal actor. He's another one of those names that you just probably don't recognize, but you've seen him in stuff. He was in Men in Black 3. If you haven't seen A Serious Man, it's a Coen's Brothers movie. It was one of the ones that I hadn't heard of until Daniel showed me it. And ever since then, Michael Stuhlbarg has been in my like top 10 actors, and he'll never drop out of that. He was in Shape of Water as well.
He has a small role in like every big movie now.
Yeah, it's kind of strange to see an actor who I loved so much as a leading man kind of fall into these small, almost nothing roles. If I was saying I didn't enjoy seeing him in this movie, I would be totally lying. Michael Stuhlbarg is great. He makes my stool hard.
Nice.
I'm talking my dick.